Hello besties, it's been a while since I filmed a new sit down video for you. I accidentally took a month-long sabbatical where I wasn't really reading or posting or doing really much of anything, but we're not going to talk about that. Instead, today we're going to be speaking about 24 of the books that I most recently read, and while I do it, I'm going to eat this chicken.
Those chickens.
I did accidentally spill this all over myself while I was taking a thumbnail.
Ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
So the first book we're going to talk about is Slow Dance.
I am beautiful in every single way.
The hot honey mustard is actually really good. So Slow Dance is an adult contemporary romance about these two people, Carrie and, oh my god, what was the woman's name? The first time I read the synopsis, I did think they were lesbians, but the man's name was Carrie, and I don't remember what the girl's name was. They have been friends since they were kids, and they've always had like a willy won't they kind of vibe, and something happened that caused them to kind of fall out of contact, and now they're coming back together because one of their friends from high school is having a wedding, and the female character, she's fresh off of a divorce, and Carrie's actually never been married, but he's been in the military, he's been in the Navy, and basically they do a little dancing, a slow dance if you will, at this wedding, and they start reconnecting, and the book is entirely about that reconnection, as well as getting some past chapters where we kind of see their dynamic before and kind of what led to them being estranged. This is by far one of the best adult romances I've ever read in my life. Rainbow Rowell just knows how to write about the human condition. I do not know how to explain it, but she just knows how people think. When she describes them, they have pleasing attributes, but they also sound like normal people, which I find quite refreshing, and she does it in such a subtle way. Also, I forgot from the last time I did a mukbang that talking over a bunch of food makes my mouth water while I'm talking. It's a really horrible feeling. Okay, the next book we're going to talk about is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. We're following two characters who are cursed with this affliction. Every time they date someone and break up with them, they go on to meet their soulmate and get married. So their connection all starts with the main character. I believe his name is Justin. I remember he had a J name. I feel like Abby Jimenez likes J names for some reason. But Justin writes on Reddit basically saying that he has this like good luck Chuck vibe. And the female character sees his post and then she starts messaging him. And so they start flirting and then they decide to meet each other. They're like, why don't we date? We'll have fun. And then when we break up, we'll go on to meet our soulmates. But obviously when they start dating, they realize they have feelings for each other. What I really liked about this book is that it explores a lot of emotional complexities because the characters both have a lot of stuff that they're dealing with. Through a series of events, the guy character Justin has to take care of all of his siblings. So he's got that going on. And then the female character, who I cannot remember her name, she has a lot of issues with her own mother. But I really, really enjoyed this because Part of Your World is one of my favorite romances like of all time. But I didn't really like Yours Truly. I think I gave Yours Truly like 2 stars. I really, really didn't like it. And then The Friend Zone, which is the first book in one of her other series, is truly one of the worst romances I've ever read in my life. So I was kind of feeling sad because I was like, okay, I've loved 1, I've hated 2. This was my 4th one, and Abby did redeem herself. We are now friends. Abigail and I, we're tight. We're tight. I loved this so much. I loved the writing. I loved the humor. There was a lot of heart to this. You're not getting any chicken. It was like the perfect rom-com that had an emotional kind of aspect to it because of what the characters were dealing with. I also don't normally like children. I'm not a big child person in real life or in books. Justin's younger siblings were part of the story, but I actually thought they were cute and I thought they added to it. And that's really saying something. So I really loved this. Billy really believes she's gonna get some of this. You're not getting any of this. The final 5-star that we're gonna talk about is Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher, which is a retelling. It's a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but with a T. Kingfisher twist on it because I know she loves to do that when she does her own thing with fairy tales. Our main character is this little fairy creature named Toadling who has been tasked with protecting this tower. This knight shows up and he is trying to save the maiden in the tower. They start being friends and he's trying to get to the bottom of like what's going on. And I loved the romance between them. Toadling is described as being an uggo. Like she's truly ugly. Like she kind of turned into a frog. And at one point the knight is like, you're genuinely ugly, but I kind of like you anyway. This is probably one of my favorite fairy tale retellings that I've ever read. I'm not super into fairy tale stuff these days, but this one just felt unique enough that it really spoke to me. I think it was the perfect length too with it being a novella. It had a special whimsical quality to it. Not even toasty. Okay, now we have 2 books that I want to give 5 stars, but something about them kind of made me not give it a full 5 stars, so they're 4.5 stars. But if I was being kind, I would upgrade them to 5 stars. But I don't know, I'm trying out half stars. I don't normally use half stars. The first of these being Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. I will say, as I say it, especially when I was thinking about Thornhedge, I kind of thought to myself, man, that should probably be a 5 star. So I guess it should be a 5 star. I don't know. I have it under 4.5. But Someone You Can Build a Nest In was the most beautiful mashing of genres that I've ever read in my life. It is a cozy fantasy meets monster romance meets horror with gore. Like it was a beautiful mix of all these genres and it was done so well. So our main character is this monster named Shisheshan, and she is awakened from her slumber. She's been hibernating, and these hunters, these monster hunters, come into her lair and they start kind of harassing her. And then she goes into the town and she finds out that everybody is trying to hunt her down because they believe that she put a curse on the Baroness and her family who like run the area that they live in. And she's like, what the fuck? I've never put a curse on anyone. And so through a series of events, she runs away from all these villagers and she ends up getting injured, and this girl named Homily nurses her back to health and they end up falling in love. Something that's so interesting about Shisheshan's character is that the way that her magic works like as a monster is that she can absorb objects like bones and skulls and branches and metal and whatever, like genuinely like any garbage. She can just absorb it into her being and kind of shape herself into a shape. So she has been like masquerading as a human, and that's how Homily meets her and thinks she's human, and they start to fall in love. And because Shisheshan is a monster, she doesn't really understand human love or how love should work. And so initially she's like, oh my god, I love Homily, I want to lay my eggs in her, not realizing that that would like kill Homily. And so there's a lot of her kind of discovering what it means to be in a romantic relationship, especially because she has lived her whole life alone because there's not a lot of creatures of her kind. And so it's just so sweet because a lot of it feels like allegory for autism and asexuality, because a lot of their relationship is not physical and neither of them like physical contact. And I just loved it so much. There's so much that you can get out of this. One of my patrons, because we actually did this other book club book, one of my patrons brought up that it also kind of works for kind of representing like disability. There's a lot that you can get out of this book and a lot you can read into, and I love a lot of like what it symbolizes as well as the actual story. There are so many funny characters and just things that genuinely made me giggle, made me smile. I loved the romance. I just thought it was such a cute book. I'm very impressed that this is a debut novel from John Wispel. I'm very excited for his next book. I will say that I looked into what it is, and it's like a Hercules retelling, and I don't really like Greek mythology, but I'll probably still give it a go because he has really impressed me. He reminds me a lot of T. Kingfisher, so if you like T. Kingfisher's like fantasy, cozy fantasy, I think that you would enjoy this. And now that I say that, I'm like, damn, I probably should have given this 5 stars. Okay, the next 4.5 star, which I do believe actually is a 4.5 star, is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This book took me by surprise. I read it for my video where I was reading the best thrillers according to booktubers. A lot of people recommended this. I think this was one of like the #1 books that people said. I had no expectations going in because to me, Lisa Jewell is a thriller author that is meant for women in their 40s. Now, if there's anything wrong with being a woman in your 40s, I just am not that. So I just didn't see myself enjoying it, but I kind of see what the 40-year-olds are on about. Like, this was good. So in this book, we open on 2 characters at a restaurant. Could not remember their names to save my life. One of the characters is there with her husband that she has an age gap with, and she's celebrating her birthday. And then the other character walks in with a bunch of her friends. She has this vivacious personality. She's kind of just sparkling in the room, and it's also her birthday. Loser girl. I don't remember her name. She notices her from across the room and she's kind of enamored by her. So she goes into the bathroom and she ends up seeing special Bright girl. I feel like I should just look up the names. I just don't remember what they are. I'm gonna stick with Loser and Bright. Anyway, Loser girl goes in and she sees Bright girl and she's like, and by the way, they're not girls, they're women. They're like in their 40s. Oh my god, hi, I have the same birthday as you. And the Bright woman is like, okay. And then they talk a little bit and then she discovers, like the Loser girl discovers that the woman that she met runs a podcast where she like interviews people. So she tracks her down through kind of like stalkery stuff and she's like, hey, you need to make a podcast about me because I'm about to make a big change in my life. And we find out that when she was 15, she first got together with her husband when he was like a lot older. So I listened to this on audio and there is a podcast element where you like hear all these sounds, like the different podcast things. And there is kind of like a third part of it. Like there's the narrative that we're hearing with these 2 characters. Then there's the podcast episodes. And then on top of that, there's like news stuff and like Netflix stuff because there's a Netflix special about the podcast because we find out that along the way, someone ended up dying. There's not a lot of mystery surrounding like who is the bad person because it's quite obvious, but the mystery is more about like exactly how it happens. What I really liked about it was at the very end, there was some stuff that happened that I didn't see coming. There's a lot of complex morality that goes into it because of the Loser girl character. I should probably stop calling her that, especially with what I'm about to say. But her character, because she was kind of groomed when she was younger, there's a lot there that isn't as it seems. I don't know. There's a lot of criticisms on this book, I will say, and I think that they're all very valid. Like, I read a lot of them on Goodreads, and I could totally understand why other people did not enjoy like certain aspects of this book. I feel like it was just kind of playing on the idea of the title where none of this is true. Like, you just don't know who to believe at any point. The first 4-star I have is All Roads Lead to Here by Mariana Zapata. This was my first MZ book, and I really enjoyed it. I want to read more from her. This is following our main character. After a really bad breakup, decides to move to her hometown that she left when she was a kid because her mom went missing. And so she comes back, she reunites with like her childhood best friend, and she's looking for a place to live. And so she ends up renting something online where it's like a garage apartment. And so when she arrives to check in and kind of move her stuff in, the guy who owns the house is there, and he's like, "What do you mean? I do not put this on the market to rent." And we find out that his teenage son is actually the one that put it out there. And so the dad is like super mad. And so then he agrees to let the female main character stay, but he's like very grumpy. It's a very grumpy sunshine kind of book because the girl is a very like positive character. And so he ends up letting her stay. But then obviously the longer she stays, the more that they spend time with each other, and then they start falling in love with each other. But he's very resistant at first because he's very like protective of his son and his home, and just he's just not really open to a relationship. She's also there to kind of like confront her demons because of her mom and like her history. And so there's a lot of like emotional elements to this. The reason that this is a 4-star instead of a 5-star is because I do think that the pace wasn't great. This book is really long for a contemporary romance, but overall I thought this was really cute, and mostly it piqued my interest in reading more from Mariana Zapata. I really want to read from Lukov with Love because I know that that's the ice skating one that she wrote, and in all points of my life I am simply looking for a book that feels like the cutting edge. Oh my god, I just realized that I have a book written twice, so it's actually only 23 books on this list. The next 4-star we have is Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, and this is a novella that I would liken to 1920s meets supernatural. Our main character is a demon hunter. Something about this main character is that she sold her soul to a demon, and so her time is almost up, but there is a mystery going on. There's like some occult stuff, like murders and things going on in there, and so she has to kind of investigate what's going on. And then it's also taking place in 1920s Chicago, so that element is like very interesting. I don't really want to say much more about it, but I will say it is gay, and I definitely want to read a full-length novel from C.L. Polk. I think that they are going to be an author that I could really enjoy. I have heard that, I think it's called The Midnight Barton is good, so excited to pick that up. If you've read any C.L. Polk, let me know. The next 4-star is You Look Better as a Ghost by Joanna Wallace. I read this because one of my subscribers recommended it when I was talking about that I enjoyed serial killer books with women, like good for her kind of things. I will say this one isn't super good for her. It's mostly about a woman who's kind of an unhinged serial killer, but I still enjoyed it a lot. Our main character is going to a grief group, support group, that's what it's called. We open with her being really mad because she submitted some art to a contest, and then she got an email saying that she'd been accepted, and then she got another email saying, "Just kidding, we emailed the wrong person." And so she gets really angry, so she decides to kill the guy that sent her the email. And so between that and then the support group, there's a bunch of stuff going on because there's somebody who like knows what she did. They're like following her around. The main character is fairly unlikable, but I liked her. Like, she doesn't like people, and she has really dumb reasons for why she wants to kill people. Like, sometimes she just doesn't like someone's hair, and she's like, they should die. So it's definitely not a good for her. It's more just like a fun thriller, and like you do learn more about why she does what she does because she did kind of have like a fucked up childhood. It was really fun and I enjoyed it. I like women killing people. Sorry. Okay, up next we have The Murders of Molly Southmore, and in this book we're following Molly Southmore, who has this weird ability where every time she bleeds, a clone of her shows up and she has to fight them to the death. And we kind of start like from like telling about her childhood all the way up to the present. I would give anything for this to be like an HBO or Showtime or Starz adaptation. Not Netflix, not Hulu. It was very much giving me like Orphan Black vibes. So if you like Orphan Black, I think that you would like this. Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This is a very short novella that you really just have to experience. All you need to know is these two women are emailing. They end up having like a very weird relationship, and some very grotesque things end up happening. This is horror. It is simultaneously one of the worst things and one of the best things that I've read. It kind of haunts me a little bit if I think about it too hard. Also, I will say that I had been spoiled by the twist in this from TikTok. But even with me knowing what was going to happen, I still really enjoyed this. I thought the writing was really good. I do want to read more from Eric LaRocca, see what the vibe is. Also, this is told through emails, which I thought was a very interesting format. The final book in the 4-star category is An Excellent Host by Chelsea G. Summers. This is a short story, like literally only like 60 pages long, about these women that invite a man over for dinner, and he may the dinner. Very much giving girl dinner. I thought it was very well done. I liked the writing. I also just really like Chelsea J. Summers. Like, I really loved A Certain Hunger. I think that if you have an opportunity to pick this up, you should. I believe there are only limited copies of it because she wrote it for like World Book Day or something like that. And I don't think there's an audiobook or anything for this. I think that you only can get like the physical copy. Also, the cover of this, absolute slay. I will say it's probably not going to stick with me forever because it's such a short little story, but it just kind of cemented the fact that I really love Tulsi G. Summers and I want to read more from her. Okay, next we're moving into the 3.5 stars. So the first one we have is Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. I think I gave it like 4 stars when I read it, but the more I thought about it, the more I was just kind of like, eh. This is a quirky sci-fi book about all these different characters that have very weird backstories. Like one of the people is a violin teacher who like sold her soul to the devil. And we also have a character who's an alien who runs a donut shop. And then there's a sapphic romance between them. Then we have a human character who is a runaway trans girl. There's a lot of really great things about this. I totally understand why a lot of people like cite this as their favorite book or, you know, a 5-star or whatever. I think for me, the writing style just didn't really hit. It's kind of just fine. I would definitely read more from this author. I'd be interested because I did love all the queer aspects and a lot of the messages of the story, and it was kind of like a found family. It's cute. It kind of reminded me of like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Also, another weird thing I would say is that if you like descriptions of food, you definitely would like that book. Food was a huge part of the characters and how they were connecting, and they would talk about all like the food and like traditional food they were having. So, okay, up next we have our book that I had put in the 4-star and then I moved it down and I forgot to delete it from the other category, thus making the count actually 23 books and not 24. I hate to say that I downgraded this to a 3.5, but I have to say it because this book has not really stuck with me. Like I kind of forgot I read it until I was like putting together this wrap up. Basically, this book is following a bunch of these girls who are the descendants of like classic book characters like Dracula and Frankenstein and like that sort of thing. And it's about them all like coming together and like solving a mystery, like a Jack the Ripper type of mystery. What's fun about the way that this is written is that there's footnotes. One person's telling the story, but the other characters butt in to be like, hey, that's not how that happened. And so when I listened to the audiobook, that was fun because it was like all these different characters like talking and whatever. This is fun, but it didn't stick with me. Finally, we have another book club book, and that is 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This was my August book club book, and I didn't get around to reading it until literally like the end of October, early November, which is quite unfortunate. Our live show discussion of this was very, very delayed. This is a gothic version of like the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Basically, we have this enigmatic author that a lot of people like don't know anything about. She is kind of mysterious. She is kind of like the Evelyn Hugo of the story. Her name is Vita Winters, and so now she is getting a lot older and she wants to tell her life story. So she reaches out to this woman, Margaret, and she's like, hey, you have to come to my mansion and I'm going to tell you my life story, and I'm going to tell the truth this time, because she is very well known for like telling lies about her background. This book is very long. It is a gothic tale if I've ever seen one. It meanders for a long time. I did find a lot of it interesting. 3.5 stars is pretty accurate for how I felt about it. I feel like a lot of the text is like an ode to books and reading and being a reader. When I was picking up the audiobook, there was an option to listen to an abridged version, and I thought to myself, that's so weird. Why is there an abridged version? And then I listened to the whole thing and I thought, you know what? I could see why an abridged version of this would hit, because there was definitely aspects of this where I was like, why are we still on this? Like, it was very slow. Like, I want to read more from Diane Setterfield, but I'm worried that all of her books would feel like this. So I don't know if I would ever pick up something else by her again, unless one of you could convince me or tell me like what I would like from her. Okay, moving on to the 3 stars. Also, we haven't eaten any chicken in a while. I'm kind of full, but I will try to eat some of this hot honey mustard. The first 3-star on our list is Playing Nice by J.P. Delaney. This was so mid. I kind of wanted to give it 2.5 stars, but I didn't want to do any more half-star categories. This is a British thriller. I'll never stop saying this. British thriller is very difficult to say. Like, say that like 10 times fast. British. I honestly couldn't even say it once. In this book, we're following a couple with a toddler, and everything is hunky-dory. They're raising their son. The dad is actually a stay-at-home dad, and the mom is a working mom. And one day, they get a little on the door, and this guy shows up, and he's like, hey, I want you to know that my son and your son were switched at birth. And then we find out the son that's actually theirs has some disabilities. And we kind of get some backstory about how both these babies ended up in the NICU, and that's how they ended up getting swapped. This new couple that's come in and they're all like, we should be close because our sons are related. Like, we'll keep our sons where they are, but like, let's be connected like family. And so the main couple are really dumb. So they're like, yeah, let's do it. But then as the story goes on, we find out that things are a bit more nefarious than they seem. And there's this whole moral dilemma dilemma question that you might have of if you found out that your kids had been switched at birth, but they were already like 3 years old, would you switch them back? Because that's kind of the big theme of it all. And there were aspects that I liked about this, but mostly aspects that I did not. I gotta level with you. I've already said this, but I don't really like kids in books. And this book is so heavily about the kids that it just didn't interest me. Also, the main couple was really difficult to follow because the guy was so dumb. Like at every turn, he was trusting the wrong people and doing the wrong stuff. And he was an idiot. He was truly an idiot. And that really was upsetting to me. The next 3 stars is one that I actually think I might have rated 4 stars when I first read it. And that's Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. This is a book about a woman who is going to prison because it comes out that when she was a teenager, she helped her boyfriend at the time cover up the murder of her best friend. When she gets out of prison, more murders start happening that are very much in the MO of her ex-boyfriend because her ex-boyfriend was a serial killer. And so you think that he might be like stalking her and you're trying to kind of uncover like what's going on. And there were aspects of this that I liked and there were other aspects of this that felt like a Lifetime movie. And also I thought there was an overuse of sexual assault in this. Like there was a lot of times when SA happened that I don't really think it added to the story. It was very crazy. Like if you want to read something that feels like the most wild Lifetime movie you've ever seen, then I highly recommend this. I also like Jennifer Hillier's writing style. Ultimately, what's my favorite by her? I want to read something else. So if you have a favorite Jennifer Hillier, please let me know. Okay, moving on to the 2 stars. We have 2 books in this category. The first one being The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I gotta say, I think I might be done with Peter Swanson because I've read one other book by him and it was a 1 star. And now we got a 2 star on our hands. And this is supposed to be his best book. Like this is the one that everyone says they love by him. So this book opens with 2 characters on a plane and they start chatting. And the woman, I don't remember what the context is, but she basically asks him if he'd ever kill someone. And he's like, well, actually, I really want to kill my wife because I found out she's cheating on me. I'm very upset about it and I want to murder her. And then rather than be afraid by the fact that he says that, she's like, okay, amazing, let's kill her together. So we start following Lily back in time and we discover that this is not the first time that she's ever killed someone. We go to like kind of to her childhood and college and kind of experience like why she's killed people in the past. I really liked Lily as a character up to a point. There was a point where it definitely got man writing a woman vibes where I was like, okay, Peter, I don't think this is what my girl Lily would do. You're making her do some weird things. The guy, I can't remember his name, but the guy that she's helping try to kill his wife is horrible. I was like, honestly, I hope your wife kills you instead of the other way around because you're disgusting. Like the way he spoke about his wife was so violent and gross. Like Lily was kind of just like, I'm a little fucked up and I'm okay with murder. He was like, ew, stop. And maybe I have double standards and I'm sorry. I don't know. It was just gross. And then the part that I was just like, my girl Lily would never do that is when she kind of started liking the guy that she was like helping. The story kind of goes off the rails and I don't know. It just wasn't very good. Like honestly, I could give this 1 star. The only reason I'm giving it 2 is because I think I read it in like 2 sittings. So I like wanted to know what was going to happen. So that's why it's a 2 star. The final 2 star is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. So Daisy Darker is our main character. Darker is her family name. They have a family home on this island and the grandma is kind of like the matriarch of the family and she's celebrating her like 80th birthday and so she asks everyone to come to her house so she can talk about her will and everyone's very upset about what they're getting in the will and they start getting very angry. One by one people start dying because this is an Agatha Christie and then there were none retelling, which I gotta tell you, if you ever think to yourself as an author, let me do an Agatha Christie retelling, I'm gonna stop you right there. Don't do it. I gotta say that by like chapter 2 I knew the twist. Like I knew immediately. Like I was reading and I was like, oh, that's what's happening. This thing is happening. It kind of ruined the reading experience for me because I didn't really have anything to look forward to because I read it and there were none. So I knew everything that was going to happen with that. I don't know. And then Alice Feeney's kind of addicted to plot twists. So at the end of the book, it's like this thing happened, but actually this thing happened. And oh, and by the way, this detail happened. And so it was just like a lot. Okay, we're in the home stretch. I don't know if I can eat any more chicken. I'll try to eat a few more pieces as we talk about these last few books. But we have, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 books to talk about in the 1 star category. First of these being Sicko by Amo Jones. This is one of those unhinged romances that I read for a video, and this is a motorcycle club romance. The writing in this was so incoherent, I cannot even begin to describe. At one point when I was reading this, I had to look at someone else's Goodreads review to make sense of it. If you've seen my video where I talk about this with my friend Aspen, you probably had a hard time following what I was saying because this book is so crazy and they really drive home the fact that these characters were raised as siblings and they literally call each other brother and sister, but they want to fuck so bad. They're like this very like wealthy family and then the main guy, he disappears for a few years. Like he like takes off, like runs away from home, and then the main girl like doesn't see him for a long time. He comes back and he's like, I don't know, like really involved in this like motorcycle club, like biker gang. The romance is weird. There's like a sex club in it. There's also like this older man that's like taking advantage of her. It's like very convoluted. There's a sex ring. It's too much. It's too much. If you want to know more, you can watch that video where I talk about it, but it's a lot. And then for another romance video, I read Layla by Colin Hoover. I know I once said I would never read Colin Hoover again, but but I'm sorry, I did. Layla was not great. It was probably one of the worst Colleen Hoovers that I've ever read. I can't decide which I hate more. I've only read 3. I read November 9, Verity, and then this one. And if I had to rank them, I would say Verity is probably the least bad, even though I think it's bad. And then November 9 and Layla really compete because the guys in these books are so bad. In Layla, we're following our main character, Leeds, and he is in a band, and he's performing at a wedding, and he sees this girl dancing in the crowd, and he's like, oh my god, my manic pixie dream girl, there she is, I need to go talk to her. And this turns out to be Layla. There is an accident, and Layla ends up getting shot, and her personality is like very different after that. Like, she's very withdrawn and very different. He wants his fun-loving girlfriend back, so he ends up bringing her back to the place that they first met, like the bed and breakfast. And then when they get there, they find out that there's like a ghost there, and he starts communicating with the ghost. The worst thing about this book is that we are stuck in the main guy's head the entire book. Like, at least with November 9, we had some reprieve when we would go to the female character, but this one is entirely the man the entire time, and his reasoning for the way he does things and the way he disrespects Layla, it's crazy. Next we have Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. Similar to what I was saying about all these other thriller authors, this is the second Mary Kubica I've read and not liked. Please recommend some good thrillers down below. I need them. This is following this small town that has a couple of like women and children go missing, and the story is told in 2 different timelines. We have like present day when this girl's been found and we believe that she's the little girl that went missing like 10 years ago, and then we also go back in time to 10 years ago to find out like all the events leading up. And this book is so long and so boring. So boring. And when you find out what the twist is, it's one of those that's so out of left field that there's no way you could have predicted it, because the character who ended up doing the bad stuff, it's such a character change, like a complete 180 from how you know this character to be. There's just no way you could have predicted it, and I really find those kind of twists irritating. Also, this book is very heavy on being a domestic thriller, and I just don't care for domestic thrillers. I don't want that. Up next, we have another unhinged romance book that I read, and that is Ride by AC James. I did a shapeshifter romance video with my friend Katie. This one, as you might guess, is a shapeshifter romance about horses. And I read this because my friend Katie owns a horse, and I knew it would make her really upset if I told her the plot of a story of a guy turning into a horse, especially because there is a scene in the book where the female character is riding his back while he's in horse form, and she does have an orgasm. I will say, as far as plot goes, the plot had more to it than most of the unhinged romances that I read. Like, there actually was like kind of a mystery and something going on, but the writing was truly atrocious. And then the final book is a 13-page short story that I read for Patreon called Stuffed by the Were Turkey, and I actually read this aloud to my boyfriend Aaron, and I traumatized him because, as you might imagine, this book is about a turkey that turns into a man, but there are parts of the turkey that don't go away when he's in man form. It was truly some of the worst writing I've ever experienced in my life. I want to close out by eating one last little piece of chicken, and we'll just have to cheers to me finally filming another wrap up. I do think there's a lot of books that I read this year that I didn't include in the wrap up, but I've been kind of in a slump this year with content. Like, I've been posting, but I've also like had a lot of burnout. So my hope is that in the new year, I will return to actually doing quarterly wrap ups. Please let me know down below if you enjoyed this video, and if you read any of these books, or if you have any book recommendations for me for the new year, things that I should read. I definitely want to read more 5 stars next year. It's one of my goals to kind of increase my average rating on Goodreads next year. I'd love to just become someone who loves what I read. Like, that would be amazing. Also, if you're interested in more content from me, like exclusive videos, exclusive readathons, live shows, reading sprints, all that jazz, then head on over to my Patreon, which is always linked in the description. And I thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day. I can't reach.